Hello, everybody. This is Paul Carruthers. I'm the communications manager for MotoAmerica, and this is MotoAmerica's weekly podcast, Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. I'm Sean. I'm joined to my left or right. I can never tell on this thing, but he's to one side of me is Sean Bice, and below we have Jensen Beeler, who is the CEO of Krämer Motorcycles. So let's do a little explaining on this before we get started, Sean. So
Yeah,
just prior to our last round at Brainerd International Raceway in Minnesota, which was a wonderful event, by the way. I mean, as far as the racing goes, it was amazing. Bobby Fong winning both superbike races, and the whole championship's kind of been flipped on its head, you know.
that's
And
right.
it's going to be pretty cool to see how this all plays out as we go forward. But anyway, back to the subject matter. So we announced on the Friday of the event that we are going to be doing the MotoAmerica Talent Cup in 2025, and that's part of Dorna's road to MotoGP. And the motorcycles we're going to be using are Kramer motorcycles, and that's why we have Jensen here. And he is the CEO of Kramer Motorcycles. So Jensen, why don't you tell us how Kramer got involved in this whole situation? I don't know if it was a phone call with you and Chuck. I don't know if you pitched the idea to them or how it worked. But why don't we get started by telling us a little bit from your side how this all came about?
Sure. Let me just clarify real quick. I'm the CEO of Kramer Motorcycles USA. Don't give me too much responsibility. Marcus Kramer is the CEO and founder of Kramer Motorcycles GmbH, which is our mothership in Germany, where the motorcycles are designed, produced, and then delivered to us here in the USA, the USA's largest market for Kramer motorcycles.
Well, you
So
know
I'm
how
just
Americans only think of America anyway. So to
That's
us, you're
right. We
just the
take credit.
CEO of the world.
You are.
we are the epicenter of it all. We are Kramer's largest market by a good chunk. So,
All right.
being the head of the operations here is definitely an important job. But I don't want to take away from anything the guys and girls at Germany are doing, because they're working super hard every day, especially on the Talent Cup right now, to deliver this bike to all the teams and racers in time for next season. That out of the way, yeah, the story for this is kind of interesting. So I mean, I've been in the industry for a little while. I've worked with you guys on the media side for
Yep.
14 years. So that gets you a good network of let's say industry insiders. And one of them calls me up one day and says, "Hey, Moto America's trying to get away from this Junior Cup thing. They want to go to a something that's more in line with Dorna's Road to MotoGP plan. They had a kind of an agreement with another manufacturer, and I heard it fell through. You should give them a call. It'd be cool to see Kramer's on the grid." So I've never met Chuck before. I just called him up and said, "Hey, I'm Jensen Beeler. I'm working with Kramer Motorcycles. I heard you have a problem. I think I have a solution." And I kind of pitched him a bike that we'd had just greenlit about a month earlier, which now we can name it. It's the Apex platform for Kramer Motorcycles. It's our next iteration of motorcycles. It's our third racing platform. It's a big deal for us. But Joe Carvinen, who's the founder of Kramer Motorcycles USA, he's been talking for a long time and kind of pleading with Marcus to build an ultra lightweight type bike that would compete against an R3, an RC390, a Ninja 400 in that category for the club racing here. And when I came on board the company, I was like, that does sound like a good idea. Let's look at the research, look at the data. What's the total market look like? What would pricing look like? What could we do? And we put it in the product roadmap, and it was behind a couple other ideas that we had, and just kind of sitting there on the back burner. And one by one, those bikes kind of hit roadblocks, hit stumbling, kind of problems that we would need more time to overcome. And we're like, okay, let's move this, at the time, a 450. Let's move the 450 project up. Because our original idea was to build something that would be a 450 single based loosely on our Evo 2 platform, which is a 690 single, and bring that to market for these small displacement racers. And then, yeah, that's where the conversation with Chuck came in. And, through that conversation, there was, well, the 450 is great. It makes a lot of power. It makes a lot of torque, but it doesn't really behave like a Moto 3 bike. And what the whole goal of the MotoAmerica Talent Cup is to get American racers ready for Red Bull rookies, which gets them ready for Moto 3. We want to build Grand Prix racers out of our American talent. So we need a bike that mimics what they're going to get on, but without the price tag. I don't know what the going price for a Moto 3 bike is these days, but it's got to be six figures.
Wow.
Some, kind of lower spec iterations of that are still, extremely expensive. So how can we deliver something that's on par performance wise, but without the price tag? And that's kind of where Kramer likes to live. So, through conversations with Chuck and Teague and Wayne, we kind of hashed out the bike that we just launched on Friday, the Kramer Apex 350 MA. And, I think it's gonna be a really excellent racing platform. It's got a lot of input from, MotoAmerica in it. It's got a lot of input from our team in Germany and our team in the USA. And I'm excited to see what the next season looks like. I think it's a great time for American road racing.
Yeah, Jensen, one of the things I'm my first familiarity with Kramer was, and we talked about this a little bit, the fact that Kale Yakov has one and has raced one for a while, which I believe is the larger one, the 690. So can you tell me, because I've looked at the website, so the various iterations of the Kramer motorcycle, the one that we're going to have in our series, is it physically smaller than the 690 kind of frame or motorcycle? Because to me, they look very much the same. I can't tell them apart.
Yeah. I mean, some of that goes to our design language, and some of that
Yeah.
goes, we haven't had a really good chance to show off the bike because we're still developing it, still in testing. It will be physically smaller. It's about 90% the size of the Evo 2. So it should be on par size-wise with the Junior Cup bikes.
Okay.
That is kind of the size that we kind of metered against. Looking at the true Moto 3 bikes, they're tiny little machines. Talking to some of the racers this weekend, there's some guys that came into our little paddock space that were 6 foot tall. Putting them on a 250 chassis is a big ask. That was one of the concerns we had, kind of doing the product development on this, is when you have an age range that's between 14 years old and 21 years old, you're getting riders that are, pre-puberty, going through puberty, post-puberty. They're going to come in all shapes and sizes, and you need to have a bike that can cater to all of them. So we had to figure out, how can we do something that is going to make sense from a road race chassis perspective? How are we going to make something that's going to make sense from an ergonomic perspective, and really have a lot of adaptability? And then knowing that this is going to be a platform, we're going to have, racers on it that are all the way up to 65, 70 years old. Some of these club racers are putting in the miles on their race licenses, and being able to cater to all those demands was a big part of, how we were designing the bike.
Yeah. So the bike itself, you mentioned, okay, it's comparable, I guess, in size to a Junior Cup bike. But for people that don't know, and I have to admit, I don't really know it very well either, tell us about the differences between this bike and a production, like a Kawasaki Ninja 400 or a KTM RC90. Size wise, it's whatever, but there's a lot of adjustability in this chassis. So explain to us why these are so much better for a kid or a rider to start out on than a production motorcycle.
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that question at some point.
I don't know the answer. I tried to understand it. Yeah.
I was trying to think of like a good analogy I could give you, and I
Yeah.
don't know if I came up with a good one, so I'll give you my bad one. A production street motorcycle, especially ones that are using the Junior Cup, those are fantastic machines. Those are fantastic machines to get people into motorcycling, and that's why manufacturers build them. They're cheap entry points into this wonderful thing that we all love on two wheels. They get you, into the sport. They get you into the community and the lifestyle. And that's what those bikes are built towards. That engineering ethos is very different than the engineering ethos you need to have to make a racing machine, especially a dedicated racing machine. And that's where Kramer lives. We make production race motorcycles, and there's a couple companies that do it, but I think we're one of the largest. But it's a rarity in this industry to have someone that's just focused on racing. We don't make anything that's street legal. We import them into the United States with a competition use exemption from the EPA. You can't take these down to your DMV and put a license plate on them, at least not without breaking federal law. And that allows you to be hyper focused on the goal at hand. And the goal at hand is the stopwatch. It's how fast does this bike go around a racetrack? That's all we care about. Things like price and reliability and componentry all go into how can we get someone onto the racetrack in a way that makes sense, that's better than what the other offerings are. And so, when you have that perspective, yeah, you go into the design process. Our chassis is a road racing chassis. It's a lot stiffer than something you'll see in the Junior Cup. we're building it with a tremendous amount of adjustability, headstock angle, rear ride height, fork offset, triple clamp adjustment. The clip-ons are fully adjustable. The rear sets go up and down. The seat goes up and down an inch. There's a lot in there to, one, teach these young racers how to set up a chassis, which is something they're going to have to see throughout their career. So they want that adjustability. So that's something that they can learn, but also to give them the performance index that's higher than what a production-based motorcycle would be. And that's the same with our electronics. We're not using just your basic, ECU that you'd find on a street bike. We're using a Mectronic MKE5, which anyone at the international level of the sport should recognize from the World Superbike paddock, World Supersport. We use it in BSB. We're seeing it in MotoAmerica. It's a very high level ECU, and it's hard to brag about an ECU. This is one of my, I'm kind of a marketing CEO. I'm not an engineering CEO. And I rack my head, like, how can I make an ECU sound sexy? And I don't. But it's very sophisticated and it's very powerful. And, we won't have it be completely open for the racers in the Talent Cup, because that's just a little too much at this level. But there is going to be some of the tables that they'll be able to play with to start learning the electronic side of it. The engine braking control, the throttle control, the ignition and the timing. Those will be maps that they can play around with to learn that part of the sport too, because, this is the sport of motorcycle racing has evolved a lot just in the time I've been a part of the industry, but also before me, where, like the golden years, it felt like if you had a lot of talent, you could show up on a bike that wasn't perfectly set up and you could, will your way to the front with it. I've heard, some of the legends talk about that. They like, oh, find something extra on race day. And there wasn't really a athletic program behind them. There wasn't really like them going to the gym and doing the cardio and riding their bikes. It was just, these are just manly men riding motorcycles. And the sport evolved. And now it's like, you got to have an athletic program. We see a lot of these racers, they have bicycles, they're running, they're doing cross training, whatever it is. And that was like the next iteration of it. And now it's beyond that. You have to have more than just your physical talent. You have to have more than just your natural talent. You have to have a mental talent as well. And that's understanding the chassis dynamics of a motorcycle, understanding the electronic programs that go into the ECU and the various systems that are on the bike. And that's what we're trying to cultivate. Ultimately, if the goal here is to build the next MotoGP world champion, it's going to have to start with these fundamentals and go all the way through the physical, the mental, and the talent side of it.
With that being said, how much tech support will there be from you guys to at least get these people started? Like, it sounds to me it might be a little over somebody's dad's or brother's help in the pit. I mean, will you be able to get them started so that they can learn this stuff as well? Because it's not just going to come down to the rider.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's part of the reason why we're trying to test so much. And we'll have actually dual testing programs in Germany and the US to get as much data and much experience and have a base setup for these bikes that is as good as possible for as wide of a variety of riders as possible. There is going to be a little bit of learning, I think, for all the teams. And I think that's intentional, because that's part of the growing that we're trying to do. But, they're not going to be left unsupported. So we will have a physical presence at every single MotoAmerica round to be able to provide support, not only for the motorcycles, but also the suspension, for any spare parts. We'll have a big rig truck chock full of parts. We won't be able to have 20 pieces of bodywork for every team member, every rider that crashes, but we'll have some and be able to support them, physically and with technical help whenever they need it. And then, of course, we're available outside of the racetrack pretty much 7 days a week from our headquarters in Fargo.
Yeah. So Jensen, there's a couple of things that, like, let's talk about the engine a little bit. And I'm not going to get real specific with it, but there's some things that, I think maybe people might take for granted, but I assume it's got on this bike. For instance, it's an electric start engine. So that makes it easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no kickstarting here.
Right. It's fuel injected. So you don't have to worry about jetting and any of that crap. Right.
Yeah.
So you got that going for you. So the engine itself is pretty high spec. It's got it's as modern as it can be. It's a single cylinder. Is it 4 valves per cylinder as well?
Yes.
Basically a 4-valve engine, since it's a single. I guess there's no more than one cylinder. Is there anything, now this is a little bit beyond my understanding too, but regarding the adjustability, can you can you move the positioning of the engine in the frame?
No, you can't move the engine around the frame.
Okay.
That's something what we haven't put into the chassis, and that wasn't something either that was asked for from MotoAmerica when we were building
Right.
the spec. The motor, part of the recipe of Kramer motorcycles is taking a road race chassis and using street bike based motors. The great part with where the industry is headed is, the motors that we have available now, these modern engines are fantastic in terms of their output and also the reliability. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel there. So what we're using is the KTM 350 XCF motor. It's a proven power plant. It's proven to be reliable. It makes great power. We're quoting over 50 horsepower. I would invite anybody to go Google what the dyno results for that motor looks like from the current iteration. We'll have an oversized throttle body with ride-by-wire, which we're developing in-house, because otherwise it's cable actuated in its dirt bike form. So that'll be a fun thing on top of it. We have a giant air box because our fuel tank is actually our tail section. So this bike's going to breathe really well. And with a little race gas in it, I think we're going to impress some people with what we're doing. But we're saying 50 horsepower right now.
And it's 17-inch wheels, I'm sure, right?
17-inch wheels.
Okay.
Cast aluminum. They're very lightweight for being cast aluminum. They're very durable. And most importantly, they're very affordable.
Okay.
That was, we know people are going to want at least 2-3 sets of these wheels per bike. We're not gonna, it just doesn't meet the requirements to say, okay, let's go put, $3,500 wheel sets on this model. They might perform a little bit better, but there is a price concern at the end of the day. And I think we've really balanced across the whole motorcycle, the parts that are going to need to be replaced, the parts that are going to be consumed, the parts that you need to buy multiples of are extremely affordable. And that's, I think, a big part and a big thing to consider when looking at the total racing platform that we're offering.
So they'll crash well.
That's that other thing. That's the other one I have a hard time explaining. Krämers in general crash well. And I think that's for two reasons. One is just basic Newtonian physics. It's less mass, which means less force when you come to a sudden stop of acceleration. So that just means less energy going through the machine to break stuff. But also it comes back to that, racing focus where we're building a product that we know people are going to crash. We know they're going to do it. So the way we design the bike is ready for that. We have sacrificial frame sliders attached to the chromoly steel frame. We have sliders on the fork legs. We have sliders on the swing arm. We have multiple sliders on the swing arm because the rear stand buttons are designed out of a plastic material that can slide. We have sliders on the fuel tank, which is made out of a rotomolded plastic, which itself is extremely durable. I've never seen one of those fail. And they can deform and pop right back into shape. They're amazing. It's an amazing kind of Kramer hallmark. There was a brake lever guards that come standard. I mean, this bike, we've heard a lot from teams and riders how hard Junior Cup racers are on their machineries, and Kramer is accepting that challenge with vigor. I think they're going to put our product to the test, but I think they're also going to be impressed by how well these bikes perform when they're sent down the track into the kitty litter.
Now, what about you? Do you guys, are you encouraging, is there anything involved with any aftermarket support in terms of any doodads that you're going to allow to be manufactured for the bikes?
Yeah, so the platform is mostly, I wouldn't say it's spec. I think T gets mad at me when I say it's a spec bike.
He does. He got mad at me too.
Bike.
Yeah.
And that's, the lawyer in me can appreciate that because there are subtle differences to the word. It's not a spec bike, but it is a single make series. Certain things will be open. The big one that's going to be open is suspension. I leave like all the rule book details to Teague and the MotoAmerica team, especially on the technical side. But we'll have it's an open cartridge system that comes on the bike from WP. Other brands will be able to develop their own open cartridge system for this bike, and then they'll be named in the rule book, is my understanding, and price capped. Okay. So there will be some ability if someone really wants to run a particular suspension brand and that brand is willing to make a solution for the Talent Cup, they should be able to use it.
Okay, that's good to know because I mean, obviously you got O'Leans, you got K-Tech, and some of these companies that we see in the paddock all the time. And Paul referenced Teague. That's Teague Daney, our technical director, who's very much involved in this. And surprising to me because the dude doesn't get too excited too much about stuff. He's pretty excited about this thing. He really digs the adjustability of this bike. Yeah.
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 I'm chuckling. I think like anyone that knows Teague will understand why I'm chuckling. His reputation preceded himself in our conversations, and I was shocked at how excited he was about it as well. Teague's a big part of this. His input and his fingerprints are all over this project. The adjustability of the chassis, the Mectronic ECU, a lot of the decisions that went into it, come kind of funneled through him, and our team in Germany is kind of sitting there going like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So, it's an interesting project and interesting working with MotoAmerica. I think, Kramer has never really worked with an organization like MotoAmerica in this way before. So it's an exciting time for us, but there's definitely, there's some good things coming down. Like I said, I'll leave the whole rule book for him and for MotoAmerica to present, but I think there's some good opportunities in there for aftermarket brands while keeping the spirit of, riders on like machinery alive. These bikes, doesn't really matter what suspension you're going to put on. They're going to be close to each other in performance. And that's what we need at the end of the day to be able to evaluate talent that should move through the ranks.
Okay. So I've got the $1 million question here. If you buy a motorcycle and you get to take it home, it gives you this ability to be able to cheat.
I've heard of this before. Yeah, this cheating
thing. It happens. It's motorcycle racing or car racing or whatever. Anybody has the opportunity to get inside a motor, they're going to try to do something that maybe the other guy can't do. How is that going to be policed? Obviously, it's a MotoAmerica issue, but
yeah, why are you grilling me on your guys' problems? I got enough of my problems to worry about. That's a good question, and I would defer to Teague on that. Ultimately, the bike will go through an entire homologation process. We're going to rip this thing apart. Everything's going to get measured. The upside of a pretty well-known motor platform is we know most of the ways that you're going to cheat with this platform, and we know how to look for that. This is something that has already kind of been taken care of by the dirt bike sector of the market. So it shouldn't be too big of a surprise to the road racing sector. That being said, I don't like the idea that people are going to cheat. I'm sure someone's going to try. At the end of the day, like that's between them and their moral problems. But
and in a class like this, it's also fairly easy to see.
It's going to be pretty easy to see when things are pretty tight and close together. Obviously, like the ECU has a checksum. They can tell if you've been messing around with the electronics. Teague and his team know how to look for the mechanical things that people will do inside the motor. We'll have through the homologation process, a lot of information to use against anyone that wants to fiddle around with these bikes.
Yeah, Jensen, one of the things that you told me over the weekend when we were at Brainerd, and by the way, Jensen was up there with these bikes, as you mentioned, so it was kind of cool that we made the announcement and he was right there. I walked outside the media center and there's Jensen Beeler. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I just read a press release about you. But anyway,
yeah, that worked out really well for us.
but one of the things I think you told me, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but isn't the engine going to be sealed?
That I would leave to Teague.
Okay.
I think that's one of those items that's still up in the air. The part that gets hard is how do you manage a sealed motor? This is a bike motor that we'd expect teams to service. They'll probably want to, do top ends on it for maintenance purposes, for longevity purposes. They're going to want to do the oil. Krämer isn't going to be pulling engines out of these bikes and taking them home with us and doing that ourselves and then bringing them back. We're not going to have some sort of lottery or, engine thing where we allocate an engine to you, throughout the year. You're going to buy a bike from us. It's going to be ready to race. You go race it. And then how Teague wants to manage the particulars of the cheating aspect of it is going to be up to him and how he writes the rule book.
Okay. So here's a question.
I think I sidestepped that question pretty good. How'd I do?
You did okay. Yeah. Okay. I actually saw you move like this on the screen.
How can I dodge this one? I don't know.
No, that's really good. And I mean,
Are you drinking a Mountain Dew?
It does look like
Absolutely, I am. Yes, sir.
Oh my God. You're the only person I know that drinks them to the size that Sean does.
Yeah, mine's almost gone, but Jensen, we're brothers from another mother. I mean,
I knew I had to bring my A game when Paul was on the call.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
I had just to reminisce. I remember getting a press bike from a manufacturer that would go unnamed, and they knew of my proclivity for Mountain Dew, and they stopped both panniers full of cans of Mountain Dew as
Oh,
a bribe, but as
that's a
show of
bribe.
goodwill. Yeah, it was.
that's pretty good.
It was a well done bribe.
All they ever did for me was put money in there.
Oh, that's
well,
yeah, that's Bush League.
It's whatever motivates the person, obviously.
Right.
So, hey, so Jensen, here I was talking about this. We have a weekly all hands call with the partners and everything on it. So we had the call today, and we kind of all go through and talk about what we're doing. And we talked a little bit about the Talent Cup. And actually, Richard asked Paul and I what we thought of it. And one of the things I brought up, I've never really been able to quite articulate this fully, but hopefully you'll understand what I'm talking about. There are these times in history. Like, I'll give you an example. There was a time when Michael Jordan was the greatest greatest basketball player.
He's pretty good at motorcycles too.
And he did like motorcycles, that there ever was. There were guys that had the benefit and also the disadvantage of being around during that time period who paled in comparison to the guy. They suffered for that guy's absolute talent. So now we have this Talent Cup. We have some riders that kind of precede this a little bit that maybe won't be able to take advantage of this. One example, I think, is probably Rocco Landers. I remember when he went and did the Red Bull Rookies, he was just too big for that bike, and he hadn't ridden that kind of a GP bike anyway. It just didn't work for him, and he grew up really big. And you said these kids from 14 to 21 or whatever, it's an incredible disparity in the sizes of these guys. But there are some riders, Alessandro Di Mario, I mean, the kid's racing in Twins Cup now, breaking all kinds of records and doing really good, but he's still only 15 years old. He seems like he could absolutely race in this series. All the Junior Cup guys, including Matthew Chapin and some of the guys at the front, Avery Dreyer, Ella, obviously a lot of these Junior Cup riders ought to be able to slot right in, but there are some riders that are racing in, for sure, Twins Cup and possibly even Super Sport that might still be able to consider this Talent Cup, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. If you're between the ages of 14 and 21, I think you have to look at your race program for 2025 and also understand that this is a multi-year deal with MotoAmerica. But I think you have to start with your race program for 2025 and look at the costs of the program that you're in now or the program you were considering for next year and what the budgets for this are going to look like, and ask what your goals are. I don't want to make the presumption that every motorcycle racer wants to be the next MotoGP world champion, but knowing the type of personality that likes to race motorcycles, and I'm even looking at you, Paul, when I say this, there's a drive to be at the very pinnacle of the sport, and this is a true pathway for MotoAmerica now to put riders into Red Bull Rookies, into Moto3, and give them an opportunity to really jumpstart their career into that World Grand Prix level in a way that hasn't been available to the series until now. And I think that's exciting. If that doesn't get you excited, then I don't know, you need to, take up basket weaving or something.
Well, and I think Sean,
that's just that for me, like, just I that's the best part I love about this. Like, I'm here to talk about the bike, and I can be kind of self-centered in my role as at Krämer Motorcycles to pitch you guys a bike. But the thing I think that's the coolest about this is the opportunity, from the series to go and to get an invitation to go to try out for Red Bull Rookies. That's huge.
right?
And for us to be a part of it, that's what means a lot for me on a personal level, not just professional.
Well, I think there's going to be certain young people, guys and girls, who have that desire to go race internationally. And I think there's some maybe their goal is to be MotoAmerica Superbike champion. Yeah. But I presented that to Sean Dillon Kelly, and he said, well, these motorcycles are going to make you a better Super Sport rider and a better Twins Cup rider and a better Stock 1000 rider than the existing Junior Cup bikes that they're riding now. So that, to me, is, that tells a lot, because I'm sure there's going to be some, I won't name names, but I talked to one of them, and then they said, oh, why would I do that? That's 2 steps backwards. Well, it might be 2 steps backwards, but then it might be 3 steps forward. It depends on how you look at it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Absolutely. If I can do an anecdote from my moto journalist days, I remember doing a press launch for a bike that was a Junior Cup bike. And we did it at a racetrack, and we had all the typical go fast, road test editors there doing their thing. And we got on the track, and it was a really fun track day because, or I shouldn't say track day, it's a test, but it feels like a track day. But it was a really fun experience on the racetrack because usually when you go to an event like that, you know, I'm okay riding a motorcycle. I'm not anything to write at home about. I do okay. But there's guys, Rennie Skaysbrook, Zach Kortz, Ari Henning, Adam Waheed. You know, I'd start running out of names. Michael Gilbert, you know, these American journalists, and let's not even take aside the, you know, the ones internationally that are just light years faster than I am. And you'd see them for brief seconds at these, you know, other track days. But at the Junior Cup one, I don't want to name the manufacturer because that's not fair, but we were all riding together. It was a lot of fun because there's nothing more fun than when you're just bar to bar with your friends riding a motorcycle as hard as you can. And the reason that lowly me could do that is because I had the talent to be able to achieve 100% or near 100% on that motorcycle, just like everyone else was. You put us on something different. You put us on a super bike. I don't have nearly the talent to reach the full capabilities of that machine, not in the way that those other riders I mentioned were capable of. And that's kind of the problem that we have in Junior Cup a little bit. You know, it's a lot easier on that racing platform to find the limits of the motorcycle. And then you start stagnating as a racer because you've reached the limit of what you can learn. And one of the goals and hopes of this project is now we're going to elevate the machinery to a point where now you're going to have to not only learn, you know, some new things, but you're going to have to elevate your skill set to take a full advantage of it. And that's going to breed, I think, a lot of good competition and elevate, you know, the entire talent pool that's going to be in the Talent Cup. And I think that's what you know, SDK was talking about, because when you do that, you're going to learn skills and tools that are going to aid you throughout your motorcycle racing career. If we were all on, you know, little razor scooters doing racing, we wouldn't be learning nearly as much as we would be on, you know, full bore you know, racing motorcycles. And that's the kind of difference that we're talking about here. When you elevate the program, you're going to elevate the skill set as well.
Exactly. You know, and that anecdote that you're saying, it really bears out in what our Junior Cup is now, because we always talk about this. These guys ride around in packs. They're always drafting each other. You never know who's going to win because it's whoever's, you know, in some position to like make a last second move. And there isn't a real good division of the ones that, you know, are really exploiting the most out of that motorcycle, because maybe they're all exploiting the motorcycle as much as they possibly can regularly, you know, and that's why they're all in a group like that. So maybe we won't see that pack mentality with this Talent Cup.
I don't know. That'll be interesting to see.
It will.
I think you will, but it might be 3 guys instead of 9 at the front.
You can't, I mean, it's hard to argue with physics, right? We have the same amount of power. We're going to roughly the same, you know, cross section for the aerodynamics. Our bike's pretty slippy, but at the end of the day, it's still a motorcycle. But we will have a lot more torque, and that'll help with kind of the processional drafting thing that can happen in this style of motorcycle. But yeah, you know, we'll see. I know that's a concern at all levels of, you know, kind of the small bore racing scene. So I don't know what solutions are coming down the pipe, but I know people are talking about it.
Yeah. So this is something completely off the script, and we don't have a script that we're going by anyway, so it's way off the script.
I was going to say, what script?
I don't know if you saw this. I don't know if you saw this, Paul or Jensen, you saw this, but I saw something today on the internet about something with World Supersport 300 is going away. What does that mean? Is that something related to this at all? Can you confirm or deny any of this?
I found out about it the same way you did today, reading it on the internet. I have no extra insight to provide. I kind of wish I did, because I'd like to sell them a motorcycle. I think we have a couple in our lineup that would be ideal to replace that kind of series. But if it's going away, that means they probably have something to replace it with. And I guess we're going to have to stand by and see what that is. But I think it just kind of shows that there's a lot of people thinking about what the future of motorcycle racing looks like. How do we cultivate the younger riders and the talent into the series to bring them up through the ranks? And obviously World Superbike's looking at their World Supersport 300 program and thinking it needs some changes to meet those needs, just like MotoAmerica did.
So at our rounds, and Paul, you touched on this, there's obviously going to be support from Kramer. Are you guys going to have like a big trailer that's got parts on it, or are you going to have a rack of engines in case somebody wants to come over and buy some stuff?
I wouldn't say it's the biggest trailer, but it's pretty big.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, there's going to be teams with bigger trailers. I don't want to get any trailer envy.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we'll have a 40-foot trailer pulling it behind a 5th wheel truck. full of spares. We'll have motors on hand. We'll have an entire complete motorcycle in that truck just in case someone really decides to send it and needs a replacement motorcycle. We'll try to have obviously a lot of the consumable parts that we see typically getting used up, in crashes and things like that. And a bunch of we'll have probably at least one extra frame, a lot of body work. I don't know, I can't sit down here and tell you like exactly what we're gonna have or anything, but yeah, we're gonna try to pack that truck as best as we can with what we think the paddock is going to need on a short-term basis. We're still encouraging teams to, fill their trucks up with the parts that they're going to need. They can't, completely rely on us to have, I don't know what the grid size is going to be, but let's say it's 40 riders. We're not going to have 40 of everything. But we'll try to have as much as we can to support people physically day of, and then our facility in Fargo can drop ship overnight, whatever we need to do there.
This reminds me a little bit of a long time ago when, every year like Yamaha would come out with their street models, but some of the brochures, they'd show that the new TZ250, the production 252 stroke that they had. And, I'd get all excited about it because I always loved 250 GP, but the motorcycle in the brochure was white bodywork. It was like, you could kind of tell it had a different shape, but it wasn't really all that sexy until you saw those bikes on track and they had all the graphics on it. Well, it was a little bit of the same thing with you guys. You walked out of the media center and there's the bike there. And I mean, we saw the rendering in the press release. And I mean, the bike is white, it's got white primer, but it's going to wait until you see what these guys do with all the graphics and how they're going to do their team livery on it. It's really going to get it exciting, right?
We actually had like a longer conversation probably than necessary internally about what color to show the bike in, but it's going to arrive in a white gel coat kind of. I'm reluctant to say primer. It's not. It's a gel coat, but it's rough, and that's because we know all these MotoAmerica teams are going to have sponsors. They're going to have team liveries. They're going to be painting these bikes. So putting a coat of paint on it is kind of counterproductive for everybody.
Right.
And truthfully, it helps us keep the cost down. If we had to paint every bike, just add, I don't know, $200, $500 to the price.
Yeah. So this might put you on the spot, Jensen, a little bit, but in this meeting we had, Wayne Rainey, our president, was on, and he's obviously very excited about this. And he actually tipped his hand a little bit to how things are going with orders. Can you speak of that at all? Because he surprised us with some numbers.
I'm kind of curious what numbers he told you. I didn't get the chance to talk to Wayne, so we might be playing a fun game of telephone. I will say orders are good. We kind of had an expectation of what the weekend would look like when we made the announcement on Friday, and definitely surpassed that number. I would say if today was the start of the season, we would have an okay grid.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging. I know talking to, several teams that it's interesting when the teams come talk to you, you start understanding like how the different ways teams in Junior Cup kind of operate. There's a few teams that you come and you can really see the calculators and the gears turning in their head, and it's in a very mathematical kind of, clinical sort of way. And okay, so the ROI, if we buy the bike this year and we amortize it over 3 seasons, and then, we actually can, use our money with the time value of money to do it this way. And you're like, you can see they're kind of processing in a different way. I think a couple of those teams, once they finish their calculations, we'll see them make some orders. We'll have, there's always a lot of interest in the paddock. I had a couple, racers higher up in the series that are kind of like, hey, I kind of want to run a bike. Or teams that are like, hey, it'd be fun to put a bike under our canopy. So I don't know where that number is going to land at the end of the day. But we're happy with where we're at right now. We're going to be doing a demonstration lap at the Mid-Ohio round with our prototype, and I would expect more orders to come in at that point in time. That's mid-August, so we'll see how many orders come in between now and mid-August. I'm not expecting too many, but I think so far we're off to a really great start. How was the side stepping on that one?
That was pretty good. You touched on something there that I'm kind of excited about, and I hope it happens. I would love to see like Rahal Ducati dress up a bike and have it under their tent for a kid, and HSBK and maybe Yamaha. You know what I mean? I just think that would be
Team Hammer.
That's the thing that will take it a little bit to another level, I think. And hopefully that can happen.
That's the kind of, I think that would be great. A lot of those teams, I mean, take a step back, right? Look at MotoGP and how that's been working. Look at the really successful programs there. It's not just the team in MotoGP. It's the satellite operation inside MotoGP. It's the Moto2 team. It's the Moto3 team. It's the camp that's a national camp that they filter their riders through, like the VR46 Academy.
Yeah.
There's these kind of channels that start really young to bring riders through all the way up to the top. And I don't see why that has to be any different in MotoAmerica. So when you see some of these big teams that you've mentioned, I think it makes a ton of sense for them to put a Talent Cup bike underneath their awning. It's one more race and platform that they can sell their sponsors on and say, hey, here's one more way that we can get your name out there and help recognize your brand and do the advertising you want us to do. It's a great way to get some excitement in the paddock. It's a great way to develop a young rider who might end up on your super bike one day, and have your kind of your influence and hooks into them at an early age. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think there's a couple teams already in the paddock that are thinking that way. And, when they get their pitch decks ready for their sponsors and start seeing some positive movement, I think we'll see some phone calls from them.
So if there's an off weekend, can a kid take his Kramer to a club race? Is there any classes that
man, this is America. We live in freedom. We can do whatever we want.
So are there classes that bike would be that could go in?
Yeah, there is. And that's that goes back to the kind of, genesis of this whole project, is when we looked at the amateur landscape in the United States. We see a lot of opportunities. One of the challenges we have as Krämer is we make race motorcycles, but it's really hard to find places to race motorcycles. People want to race production motorcycles for some reason. But there are just about every club has carved out some sort of rule that allows for supermotos, 450 cc's or less to race with them. And that's kind of the loophole we're exploiting, if you will. Because those bikes typically aren't street legal. They are true race machines with a quote unquote race chassis. They're right in our displacement range. They're single cylinder. I think if you're a pro-am type rider who's going to do some club races on their off weekends, your local club probably has some sort of provision where you can do at least one, possibly more races a weekend with this bike. And we've been talking a little bit to a couple, larger pro-am amateur racing series in the US about having specifically, this bike mentioned in the rule book as being legal for certain things. And I think we'll have some exciting news on that in the coming weeks and months. So there's definitely a push, for the entire, landscape of motorcycle racing outside of MotoAmerica in the United States to have a home for a bike like this.
That's
so has Kramer's main business up till this point? I mean, is it me going and buying a race only Kramer and driving to Laguna Seca and doing a track day here and there? Is that?
You are a core demographic. Absolutely.
I'm hoping I can get a deal though. That'll make me more core.
I know a guy. Let's talk after the show. Yeah. I mean, our customer is, we try to build Grand Prix motorcycles for people that will never step into a Grand Prix paddock. At least that was the ethos until this announcement, because I would love to see someone come through this program and be in MotoGP or Moto2 or Moto3. That would be fantastic. I think that's the goal for everybody at Krämer, to be honest. But our real focus is amateur racers and providing them with a turnkey racing product that they can wheel right off the delivery truck onto their starting grid and build it to a level that makes them podium contenders, if not race winners. That's our whole jam.
Yeah, and I have no doubt, because she's told me that Kaylee Yakov has advanced her skills because of the Kramer that she has. I mean, she's done that a bunch. I mean, she has an R6 practice bike too, but at the same time, that Kramer's taught her a lot of skills that she's been able to apply to these production bikes. So that's a great example right there.
I love Kayla. She's such a beast.
She really is quite a talent.
Yeah. She has no desire to do Talent Cup. I talked to her.
Well, it makes sense at this point. I get it. I mean, she's kind of done that a little bit before this, I think. But that's what I'm saying. It's a moment in time, Jensen. I mean,
right.
She wasn't there. You had this out a few years ago, she would have been right in the sweet spot for it, and probably still could be, but she's just so talented. She's advanced quickly. So makes sense. But
yeah, we're lucky. Kayla raced our Evo 2 and a number of clubs and did extremely well. And I think really showed what that platform is capable of. And it comes back to that road racing chassis, being able to develop her skills. I would love to take, credit as that for as a Krämer Motorcycles, but Kayla's a beast. That girl's got tons of talent.
unbelievable.
It's fantastic to watch her career, and we all kind of like that she started on a Krämer, but she's just such a fun personality that it's hard not to just root for her.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, this is going to be great. And you said one of the reasons we did the podcast today is because you're heading up to Ridge tomorrow. So are you going to be at our next round?
No, we'll have, this is something that's kind of grown organically. We've been having MotoAmerica racers that are in classes that don't have testing regulations or limits wanting to ride our bikes before a race round. So I'll be up there with Corey West and Patricia Fernandez West to provide a motorcycle for him to ride with the Omura and Wormra amateur races up there ahead of the MotoAmerica round the week following.
Right, because they'll be racing in Super Hooligan on those bikes that they have. And hopefully Andy DeBrino is going to be back. He's supposed to be testing out this weekend too, I've heard.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to talk to Andy and where his health and recovery is. I know he's still doing the thing and trying to heal up as quickly as he can, and his focus is definitely on his MotoAmerica program.
Yeah,
we're hoping to have him actually racing a Kramer in his amateur pursuits this summer as soon as he's healthy and ready for it. So don't tell Andy. I think Corey's gonna be on his bike this weekend.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all right. He told me he was actually going to try his his KTM to see if he can do it. He just wants to give it one more try and see. It's a little up in the air, but he's close, he says. So it's good.
I've known Andy for a long time, living in Portland with him. I mean, he's a phenomenal
great guy.
person, and if he can find a way to race that weekend, it's going to take a mountain of people to stop him from doing it.
Yeah,
right.
He's got a lot of determination, and he wants to get back to 100% as quickly as possible and go give all those hooligan riders a tough time.
That's right. Yeah.
Sean, do you have anything else?
No, this is really good, Jensen. I'm really glad to have you on. It's funny. I mean, Paul and I talked about the last time you were on. We had this whole thing about King of the Baggers, and now we're so on a completely different subject at this point. I mean, that's behind.
Now the shoe's on the other foot. We have people making fun of his class.
Yeah, you gotta goes around, comes around. If you can't dish it out and you can't take it,
that's right.
That's only fair. I definitely got a little of that when we were in the paddock at Brainerd, and it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, okay.
I promise I'm not going to make fun of you at all, Jensen.
You know what? That's you do motorcycle journalism for a long enough time.
We're on your side.
Your skin gets a little tougher, and
I just have one request.
Yeah.
We do a media day, but we don't invite any of those fast guys you mentioned earlier. It's just me, you, and Sean.
Yeah,
perfect. Perfect.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I'll bring the Mountain Dew.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't
Please,
take that stuff. That's
please
poison.
bring the Mountain Dew.
It's poison.
Paul, that's why you look the way you do, and we look the way.
Wow.
That's exactly it.
All right, guys.
Good stuff.
Thanks a lot. I'm really looking forward to this program. I think it's going to be exciting. I like watching new stuff happen, and this is definitely something new. So it'll be a good time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. Anytime I get to talk motorcycles with you guys is a pleasure. That's one of the joys of this job.
That was really good.
All right, you guys. Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks. You too. Take care, guys.